So not long ago, I finished my afternoon shift at the county hospital, and I was on my way back home walking because I have no car and no one could come pick me up. Yet, I don't mind at all walking because my house isn't that far and I'm used to walking ever since I was a kid. It was about 10:30 p.m. and I was just in the sidewalk outside the hospital arranging my sweater. The street was so empty, barely a car or two passed by, but that usually happens on Saturday nights in that area where there's nothing commercial except for a Subway and a McDonald's. I started walking towards home when I spotted ahead two small figures sitting at a bus bench. There's usually homeless people and addicts outside this hospital almost every day and night, so obviously I thought it was some pair of hobos or something usual. But as I got closer to the bus stop, I saw it was two children. I thought to myself, what the fuck? What are these kids doing by themselves in this place so late? It can be so dangerous. But I also thought maybe their parents were nearby, or I don't know. Honestly, I just wanted to go home and rest. I was so tired. Then when I finally reached the bus stop, I confirmed that it was two kids sitting in the darkness. They were wearing hoodies and were looking at some coins one of them had in the hand. I slowed my walking pace to look at the scene, and then I stopped to ask the children the typical, "Where are your parents?" because they looked so young and it was late. That's when all of a sudden my heart sunk and my blood fell to my feet of sudden fear that froze me in front of these two kids. The younger one was like 6 years old, too little, and he was somewhat moaning about something, and the older one was about 10. Both boys, as they looked at the coins in the oldest hand, they both asked if I had $2 I could change for the coins. It all happened in less than a minute, and they looked up to me, and that's when I saw the freaking pitch black eyes. They had no white in them, nothing. It was so creepy and horrible. I just shrieked and I think I said crap, and I just ran back home without looking back, but I heard them shout something like, "Come on, we just need some change." Since that night, I ask my friends to come pick me up when I do those afternoon or night shifts, because I would not like to see something like that ever again. But there's been days that still nobody can come for me, so I have to go home walking or I take the bus, and I have to go basically praying so I don't find something like that ever again. At the time of my encounter, I was 29 and living alone in an apartment on the north side of Indianapolis. After I got off work, I wanted nothing more than to drink whiskey and veg out in front of the TV. At some point I must have fallen asleep on the couch. I awoke to the sound of someone knocking at my door. A little groggy and still a little drunk, I went to the door. When I looked through the peephole, I saw a dark-haired girl, possibly Hispanic, standing there. It was late. The entrance hall in my building was not well lit. One dim decorative chandelier was all we had at night. I lived on the second floor, so she was basically standing in front of the light, leaving it difficult to see her face. I didn't say anything, but she must have seen my shadow under the door, or heard me pressing against it, because she blurts out, "I need to use your phone, let me in." I remember being taken aback by the rudeness and assertiveness in her voice. She must have been some meth head that's confused, I thought. "You have the wrong apartment," I responded, watching her through the peephole. She stood there, not moving for what seemed like a long time. "I need to use your bathroom, please let me in," she finally said in an annoyed tone, almost like I was the one bothering her. I never heard of black-eyed kids at the time, but many years later I read that they are usually accompanied by a feeling of absolute fear. I didn't feel that, but I do remember feeling anxious and nauseous. Whether that was the booze or nerves is difficult to say. "It was too late for this shit," I said, trying to match her tone. "Get the hell away from my door." I started back toward the couch when she knocked on the door again. "Let me in, this won't take long, we just need to use your phone." She used a sharper tone than before. I'd had enough. Chick or no chick, this tweaker bitch was about to have herself an accident. I was reaching for the deadbolt when I realized she used the word "we." She wants me to open the door, I thought. She probably has her tweaker boyfriend standing out of view, waiting to clock me in the head as soon as I do. Once more, I checked the peephole. She was leaning against my door with both hands, her face inches away from the peephole, as if she would like nothing more than to jump through it. Black eyes like marbles, and she was seething.
"Let me in."
She said it as if keeping her out was some kind of joke that had gotten old. Then she slammed her open hands against the door so hard I jumped back. That's when my stomach wrenched, and I covered my side of the door with a pint of Jack Daniels and whatever I had for dinner. I ran to the bathroom to finish puking. Then I grabbed the .45 I kept in my nightstand and returned to the front door. I stood and listened for a couple of minutes, trying to hear if anyone was out there. Eventually, I mustered the courage to look through the peephole. I saw no one. I stayed awake the rest of the night and didn't dare open my door until I heard one of my neighbors leave. He was an older guy, 50 or so. I asked him if he had heard or saw anything. He said no. I told him about what had happened, omitting the part about the eyes because I didn't want to sound crazy. All he had to offer was, "Area's gone to shit." Then he left. He was the first and last person to whom I talked about my experience for obvious reasons. I lived there without incident until my lease expired. Then yesterday, some 8 years later, I watched an episode of Ancient Aliens. They made a mention of a Texas man who was accosted by 2 teenagers with black eyes. I've been reading stories online ever since. I have one experience with black-eyed kids. I was on vacation with my parents a long time ago, and it was very late at night. I had just gotten back to the hotel, but I wanted to go back downstairs and kill some time in the arcade, and I decided to take the elevator. What happened next was one of the most confusing, terrifying experiences of my life. I get in and go down, and in the elevator, as it gets closer to the bottom floor, I suddenly feel terror I've never felt before in my life. The feeling was so specific. The door opens, and standing in front of me are 2 kids with huge pitch-black eyes staring at me. One kid looked a bit older than the other, and was taller. They were both wearing average-looking clothes. They said nothing, but they were beyond threatening. I mean, I would rather have the door open to someone holding a gun to my face than these creatures with the feeling they gave off. I was in shock for a second, and immediately closed the door and got back up as fast as I could. My little brain was a mix of traumatized and highly confused at what happened. Needless to say, I never used the elevator alone, or went into the hotel arcade late at night ever again. This happened before. I even knew that other people encountered them didn't have decent internet at the time. I never saw one outside of a dream ever again that usually presented itself as a young girl with long black hair and large fang-like teeth. My encounter happened in late June, in the middle of the night shortly after I had fallen asleep. I had spent the day earlier gardening, and had sprayed around the house to control mosquitoes that day, which I thought might have caused me to hallucinate this experience. I also lived alone at the time. Anyway, I went to bed, and at some point was woken up by the sound of children giggling and playing outside my house in the middle of the night. I lived in a 1-story rancher and can hear them playing and tapping on the windows in the front of my house. I peeked out the blinds to see these kids, and they appeared to be 3 Asian kids under the age of 10. I don't remember what the boy was wearing, but the girls were in black dresses like they had come from some event. They had ear-length jet black hair with bangs. I was in my PJs, so I decided to ignore them and pretend they were not there, hoping they would realize that they are in the wrong place and go away. Then they started knocking on the door, persistently. I figured they must have seen me and were not going to go away, so I answered the door. The 3 kids were there, and an adult facing away on the sidewalk. They insisted that they lived at my house, and they needed to come in. I told them that they had the wrong house. Then they asked if I knew some person, and said they were coming to meet him, and again insisted that they come in. Again, I replied that they must be confused, that it was just me here, and I don't know them, and they don't belong in my house. There are many Asian families in my neighborhood, so I thought they might be arriving in town late to visit someone, and have the wrong address. I then shut the door. Again, there was a knock. I opened it, and this time it was the adult standing in front of the kids. At this point, I must have noticed the eyes because I became extremely terrified. There were also a few additional family members now gathered on the sidewalk to my house. He looked to me like a Japanese older man with a thin long mustache and wore sunglasses and a black suit. Again, he said that they lived there and were meeting someone else and insisted that I let them in because they had traveled a long way. At this point, something clicked in my brain, and I stared back at the man and very firmly told him I knew who he was and that he did not belong here, and went to shut the door. At that instant that I said this man showed his true form, which was that of some sort of demon on beast. He screamed or roared in my face, grabbed me by the neck and pinned me up against the wall, enough to knock the wind out of me. I wish I could give a better description of what it looked like, but the second I saw it change, I closed my eyes and began to pray as hard as I could, and focus only on the praying and block out this thing that had pinned me against the wall. It was the only thing I could do, because I was sure it was going to kill me at that moment. Not sure what happened next, but I woke up in the morning in my bed. However, my neck was stiff like I had whiplash for days, and my front door was ajar. Every single night after this incident, I could not go to bed without putting a chair with a 20-pound weight on it in front of the door. I also had to push the recliner in front of the door. Luckily, I moved from this place earlier this year. This happened about a week ago. I had just gotten home from work around 6 p.m. Pacific Coast time, as I live in sunny California, for all you people who are wondering where this happened. Anyways, back to the story. I live with 3 of my friends, but tonight they were all out doing their own things, which I was completely fine with since I hadn't had time to myself in a while. I repeated my daily routine after work. I took a nice hot shower, made some dinner, and watched some TV, and I got ready for bed. By this point, it was around 11:45 p.m., and I was exhausted. I had just closed my eyes to get some well-deserved shut-eye when I heard a loud knock at my door. At first I thought it was just one of my roommates, but they all had keys. That's when I decided that I should probably go and check who was at the door. Annoyed, I got back up and made my way to the door. Now the first thing you do at night before opening a door is to check the window or peephole to see who's at the door, and that's exactly what I had intended to do, but for some strange reason I went straight to opening the door. That's when I saw them. At first I wasn't too intimidated. I mean, what could go wrong? They're just kids, right? At this point I could clearly make them out. They were both boys. I'm guessing around anywhere between 10 to 15 years old and staring directly at the ground. They were both pale, almost like they were fading away in front of my eyes. One of the boys had brown hair, but even that seemed like it was fading. The other one, who was a bit shorter, had black hair. Now, before you get ahead of yourself, this isn't weird by any means at all. At least not in my neighborhood. There's always kids playing around my neighborhood at this time of night, but this was the first time they had actually knocked on my door. After what seemed like an eternity of complete silence, the taller boy with brown hair asked me to let them in, and that's when I was hit with a deep feeling of despair and terror. After a second of hesitation, I was finally able to ask, "Are you kids okay?" Again, the taller boy asked more forcefully this time,
"Let us in. We need to call home."
So many things were rushed through my head at this point. I almost didn't believe this was happening. There's no way in hell those black-eyed kid stories were true. Terrified, I tried asking them to leave but was interrupted by the taller boy again, asking me to let them in, and if I didn't, they'd never be able to go home. Almost as if hypnotized, I slowly started opening the door wider and wider. I had no idea what was coming over me. I was about to say the magic words giving them full right to come in. That's when I caught a glimpse of the shorter boy's eyes. There was nothing, only an abyss of blackness staring into my very soul. I don't really know what happened, but my body suddenly reacted, and I slammed the door in their faces. I probably stood there for an hour, still in shock, before one of my roommates opened the door and nearly hit me with it. I couldn't go to sleep that night. I actually haven't slept well at all lately. Sometimes when I stare out from my bedroom window, I still see 2 boys standing at the light post not too far from my house. I think they're waiting for something, but I'm not sure what. What I do know is that if you see kids at your door, don't bother opening it. It may very well be the end. Hey guys, thank you all for watching my video, and a very big thank you for Liz May for this suggestion in this video. Quite honestly, I never dived that deep into black-eyed children before, and now that I have, I'm really glad I never came across any of them. Well, knock on wood. If I ever did, I'd probably run like hell. So I really hope you liked the video, Liz May, and let me know down below if you really like this video or any more suggestions that you'd love to share. Anyways, guys, my good friend Bobby Rodriguez has recently made me a website. Yes, Joey's Nightmares now has a website, so I'm going to leave a link right here for you guys, so that way you guys can go to it, submit your stories there to me through my email address. Go check it out. The Nightmare Army now has a website where we all can stack up and take over the world. Well, anyways, guys, just thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Everybody's really awesome on this channel. I'm very happy that you guys like my content. I've grown to almost 230 subscribers now, and just to think last week I had 200, or even last month I had 200. So, seriously, thank you for all your support, and thank you all for subscribing. You guys are awesome. And let me know down below what video you guys want next. I'll catch you next time, guys. And just remember, the best ideas always come out of nightmares.